Stocks jumping, oil falling, gasoline is now under $4 a gallon nationwide. And the White House continues to defend its deal with Iran. The 14-point agreement designed to end the war, it's a 60-day period from memorandum of understanding to negotiate reopening the Strait of Hormuz. That starts immediately. Begin formal talks on Iran's nuclear program. And here's J.D. Vance last hour.
They would have to get a lot of money in order to rebuild the nuclear program. You're talking about billions and billions of nuclear infrastructure that the United States destroyed. In order for them to rebuild that program, they would have to get a lot of money. And we have them in an economic chokehold right now that we're not going to release until they fundamentally change their behavior. What would that look like? That would mean a real inspections regime. That would mean a real enforcement regime. As the MOU contemplates, that would mean the destruction of their enriched stockpile.
Steve Moore, you are an economics expert. How do you see it? Clearly, from a market perspective, this is going in the right direction for the American people. Longer-term interest rates are well anchored. Gasoline is falling. Oil prices are falling.
Yeah, no, I think that's unquestionably true. There's no doubt about it that the biggest issue for the American economy, as you guys have been talking about day after day, is what is the oil price? And people forget, you go back to January and February, before the Iran war started, we had the lowest gas prices basically in history, adjusted for inflation. In fact, a lot of states were below $2 a gallon at that point. You know, it's going to take a while to get back to that, but there's no question about it. A falling price of oil and a falling price of gas at the pump is a tax cut for the American consumers, and it is a stimulus to the. And even though we're a net exporter of oil, so it helps, you know, the oil producers when the price goes up. But overall, very positive. Now, you know, I don't know what the long-term ramifications of this are. I don't know if you can trust the Iranians to keep to this deal. That's been the controversy. But in terms of the economics, good. Let me make one other quick point, that because, you know, I've been debating some of my liberal friends about this deal, and I don't know all the aspects of it. But if Trump has succeeded in denuclearizing Iran, then this is an enormous positive for not just the saving of potentially, you know, millions of human lives, but also for the economy. You can't have an economy where you're worried about, you know, people being blown up. So overall, this is a victory for Donald Trump and the American economy.
I would echo some of that. Atlanta Fed GDP after yesterday's really strong retail sales at 3%. The next update won't be until next week. But again, we talked about the strength of the retail sales, the tax windfall coming off of the refund checks that we got. I think that further propelled the consumer. I will say, Dagan, that you guys know I often do this. Bank of America kind of every week tracks their debit and their credit cards and mortgages and small businesses, and they can literally track the money coming in and the money coming out to accounts. And I am excited about small business, but I think there's also some caution underneath the surface that I just want to bring to the table. Small businesses are contributing to job growth. There's strong hiring going on, but I think underneath the surface there are some softness trends that we need to look at. Profitability is waning, and again, I think low oil prices will help that to rebound. Cost pressures, elevated fuel expenses, all of those are now outpacing revenue growth, particularly for firms with under $500,000 in annual revenue. And that is the companies that are experiencing the biggest drags on margins. So again, I think not that this deal couldn't have come soon enough, because I think you can't do these deals based on profit margins today or yesterday. But I think long term, I'm hopeful that small businesses will start to see this as a tailwind. The only other good news is that looking at their credit utilizations rates, there is the ability for them to borrow more or to take on and extend credit. So not to say that small businesses are going bust. They have access to credit and they're using it. But when I start to see them getting squeezed on profit margins, particularly the smaller ones, I just sort of get nervous and want to see that trend turn around.
I think diesel matters a lot. I haven't checked diesel for a while. It's down 50 cents a gallon from a month ago. That's good. It's still up about $1.50 from where it was last year. So you talk about margins for small businesses, particularly blue-collar folks.
Yep.
Diesel prices are huge. So we'll see how fast that comes down, but those have been really elevated. You made an interesting point, Steve, about the long-term ramifications of this whole deal. And you said, I don't know if Iran's going to keep the deal, okay?
I don't know.
I don't think they are.
Yeah,
I'm almost
not.
positive they will not keep the deal. I don't think there's any thinking person who really believes they're going to keep the deal. But I think that whether they will or won't is kind of being overblown with this memorandum. We're like, is this memorandum strong enough? Does it hold them accountable enough? And I would argue that's not, at the end of the day, that's not the thing that matters most about what happens. To me, there's two things that matter most about what just happened. One, we set back their military. I don't know, by the estimates, I'm seeing 15, 20, 25 years. I don't know if that's true. I'm not a military guy, but that's what everybody's telling me, okay? Let's assume it's half that. We just bought a ton of time with them. Number two, and Dagan alluded to this in the first hour, but I think this gets buried so quickly. The entire globe has said we are done with Iran and the Strait. Everybody is saying that. Their neighbors are saying that. Japan is saying that. The United States is building the capacity so people can say that. We have and it's actually been fascinating to me how many countries have come out.
Yeah.
UAE said we're done with the Strait.
Well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
UAE said we're getting our reliance on the Strait of Hormuz to zero.
To zero.
We are done relying on them forever.
That's
They're
hard
trying to
for me
build
to believe.
pipelines.
I mean,
No, I will read you
what are they going to use an
Pipeline.
alternative?
I will read you the.
Pipelines to
I
the
will
Red
read
I know
you
they're
the.
saying that, but I don't know.
No, but
if we can
Steve, here's my point.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, that sounds crazy because the Strait is right there for them.
Yeah.
But if the UAE is saying we are done with the Strait, I don't think they're bluffing. Like they're saying we will build pipelines.
Here's what they said yesterday. So the UAE has a pipeline that circumvented. Sorry for my bright yellow folder. That circumvented the Hormuz, that they increased the capacity of it 10 years. They built it 10 years ago, and it was pumping. It was one of the reasons that oil didn't skyrocket more because that was used as a conduit for crude. So it's planning. One, it's building another pipeline, opens next year. Then it said yesterday, it's planning an expansion of eastern ports in Dibba, Fujairah, and Khor Fakkan outside of the Strait on the Gulf of Oman. Also, it will add a new harbor on the same coast, and it's adding new pipelines, rail, and road networks. The UAE is moving to cut dependency on the Strait of Hormuz to zero.
Well, I'm up for it.
Okay.
If they can pull that off, I'm all for it. I just want to go back to that figure that you two were talking about, the 3% growth that we're looking at for the second quarter. Now, look, there's still weeks to go, and these are all going to be revised. But 3% is a very good number given what we've been living through. I mean, remember, you know, that's basically what? April, May, and June, and that's when the oil prices went through the roof.
What do you say
so
to
my point is,
critics
if we can get, sorry?
What do you say to critics who say 3's good, but it could have been 4 or 5?
It could have, definitely. I mean, there's no question about it that this situation they're in has probably cut 1 or even 2% of growth. My point is we could have 4 to 5, but that means we can get back to 4 to 5% growth, right? I mean, those are humongous numbers. That means the deficit comes down. That means inflation comes down. The other point related to this is it's not just going to be the fall in oil prices, because they will fall, but AI is having gigantic impact already on the productivity of American companies. I mean, I was talking to Bob Nardelli. I know you have him on your show. He's oftentimes on. He's one of the great American CEOs, and he's saying the companies he's involved in, they are saving so much money in production costs. So I'm with Larry Kudlow. I think we could be headed to 0 to 1% inflation over the next number of months. What do you think, Brian?
Lydia.
Not going to argue with you on that. I would love to see it.
Yeah, I'd love to see
it.
But it could be.
The other thing that I think about too is that when I hear about the critics, and I didn't hear all of J.D. Vance's comments because I think he was speaking as we were coming on the air, but we just played a soundbite from him where he was saying, listen, Iran has been set back. It's going to take them years to build up the billions of dollars that this has cost them to rebuild their nuclear program, which I think is an excellent point. I think that's responding to criticism of this deal that essentially they're going to be allowed to sell their Iranian oil back into the market. It's going to allow them to have money in that capacity. What the critics are also saying is that, Iran is essentially so compromised at this moment, we should just go in and finish. We should take whatever nuclear dust is still there. And to that, I just wonder, what would that look like? When they say that, what are those critics actually saying?
Regime change.
Right.
Well,
and
they're also saying boots on the ground.
Boots
they're
on the
saying
ground.
our men and women in uniform physically
exactly.
in country.
And I just don't know that there's the appetite for that.
I agree.
Yeah, I think President Trump is making the correct calculation that there's the possibility for an off-ramp right now with diplomacy and a deal, and it's worth fully exploring that over the next 60 days.
In terms of money, one of the issues is the money from exporting oil, how that would be used by Iran for malign purposes, potentially. But one of the issues with the sanctions relief, that there's an estimated $20 to $50 billion that's being held in Chinese bank accounts because China, the teapot refineries, were the purchasers of 90% of Iran's oil exports. And the memorandum of understanding is not obviously specific about relief or the release of that money, but that's kind of one of the things that people have pointed out is that you should maybe keep that money under lock and key until this regime has proven to be a better actor than it has been in the past.